There's a device that I've been using called a Whoop.
Hello and welcome back to the 5th season of the International Game of Whoop. I'm the creator and host of IGOW, Dan Sugano, aka Skittles, and in this video we're going to be covering IGOW 5 Preseason Training Ground Challenge number 4, Neo's UV Creations Combo Wombos. So the idea for this challenge and all the tricks in it is that they're all some type of combination of flips, rolls, and spins. And there's going to be a lot of new tricks introduced, so if you're not familiar with some of them, stay tuned later in the video. IGOW Studios Dan is going to break them all down individually. But I first want to say a few things about this week's title sponsor, Neo's UV Creations. Hey IGOWers, I just wanted to take a minute of your time here to talk about this week's title sponsor and a supernova level sponsor of IGOW 5, and that's Neo's UV Creations. So if you're in the Whoop racing scene at all, you've probably already heard of Neo's, but I just wanted to break it down for those of you that haven't heard of them before. So first of all, Neo's is run by Ryan Carr, aka Wookie FPV. He's participating in IGOW and he's participated in past race GOWs and IGOWs as well. And his dad, Steve. And they're two awesome guys. Their business is basically a UV printing company, and you can go on their website and like upload a picture that you've created or like just an actual picture, and you can have it custom printed in a special UV reactive light that really makes it pop out when it's under a black light, and that's their specialty. They do all types of UV reactive stuff. They sell all different types of things there, so go check it out at neosuvcreations.com if you're interested in some of that. But the other awesome thing that Neo's is involved with, of course, is drone racing. And Ryan has a whole team of drone pilots that he sponsors. He coaches them, and he's been teaching them drone racing, and it's also part of their school curriculum, which is awesome. And they've gotten shown so much improvement over just the last year. Like in Wootopia, they were kind of mixed throughout all the different levels of the skill levels of the qualifying, from all the way from the bottom up to the higher levels. And then at Tiny Whoop Open just this last couple weekends ago, they had 6 total pilots in the elite class of Tiny Whoop Open, and that includes Wookie himself. So huge improvement from all of the guys on the team. It's awesome to see them doing that. And they don't just participate in the races and bring their whole team there. They also sponsor the races at some of the highest levels, just like they're sponsoring IGOW at the supernova level, which is awesome. And if you're watching any of those races on the stream, typically the coolest looking element or elements on the track is the Neo's UV Creations. So if you remember Wootopia 2025, the dive gate there, the big hexagon dive gate, that was Neo's UV Creations sponsored. And then at Tiny Whoop Open, you saw all the Neo's gates that really popped out, the black ones with the writing on them. They had a section on both tracks. It was kind of past Tiny Whoop Opens. They've had all super cool things. They had a tent with all black lights in it, and that whole section was Neo's UV at the last Tiny Whoop Open. And then at the first one, there was a whole stairwell that we made all dark, and then that had the black lights everywhere with these big Neo's gates going up and down the stairs. So it looks like I ran the GoPro out of battery, rambling on about all the great things about Neo's UV Creations. And that makes sense, there's so many of them. But the summary is that Ryan and his dad Steve are awesome for the Whoop community, and they're going to have a lot of big things coming soon, so look out for those. If you need anything UV reactive, be sure to check out their website, neosuvcreations.com. And huge thanks again to Neo's for sponsoring IGOW at the supernova level. Thanks, Ryan. I can't wait to see you and the Neo's team at the next big event. Wow, it's so impressive to see the level of progression from all of the Neo's team members this season. Okay, so now let's jump straight into the Emacs example submissions for the Neo's UV Creations Combo Wombos.
Happy feet, Wombo combo.
Here are the beginner requirements for IGOW 5 Preseason Training Ground Challenge number 4, the Neo's UV Creation Combo Wombos. So the first thing you're going to need to do is find or set up a point of interest, and that's really just anything you can see in your FPV view. I'm going to use these monkey bar things here for the first part of the challenge, and that is to perform a Juicy Flick on the point of interest. And that's simply a half front flip and then half roll, while you keep the point of interest in your FPV view for the half roll. So then the second requirement, you can use the same point of interest, or I'm going to use a different one here, is to perform a snapback, which is basically the same idea, but a half backflip and then half roll. When you're keeping the point of interest again in your FPV view for the half roll, and you have to use the opposite half roll direction you used in the Juicy Flick. Then you just have to fly away cleanly and perform any other trick, and you've completed the beginner requirements for the Neo's UV Creations Combo Wombos. Here are the intermediate requirements for IGOW 5 Preseason Training Ground Challenge number 4, the Neo's UV Creations Combo Wombos. So all of the new tricks in this challenge week are some type of combination of flip, rolls, and spins. And for the intermediate challenge, we're going to be doing Rubik's Cubes and Cubics Rubes. So the first thing you're going to need to do to complete this challenge is a Rubik's Cube, which is a half flip, full roll, half flip. And then once you've completed that, you need to do a Cubics Rube, which is kind of the analog of that. There's a half flip, full roll, half flip. And then you need to do one more Rubik's Cube, but you need to have the opposite flip and roll direction as your first Rubik's Cube. So I did a front flip and a right roll Rubik's Cube the first time, so this time I need to do a back flip, left roll Rubik's Cube. Once I've completed those 3 tricks, I just need to fly away cleanly and perform one more trick of any kind to complete the intermediate requirements for the Neo's UV Creations Combo Wombos. Here are the advanced requirements for IGOW 5 Preseason Training Ground Challenge number 4, the Neo's UV Creations Combo Wombos. So we're going to be doing inverted yaw spins for the advanced requirements, and the first requirement is an inverted 360 yaw spin that you get into with a half flip. So you do a half flip to inverted 360 yaw spin and then you exit. And then the second requirement is a inverted which is like an alternating inverted yaw spin, like you're shaking the drone's head. And exit out of that. And finally, your last requirement is another 360 inverted yaw spin. This one you have to get into with a roll and do the opposite inverted yaw spin direction that you did in the first half. Exit that by flying away cleanly, do any other trick, and you've completed the advanced requirements for the Neo's UV Creations Combo Wombos. Okay. I know that's a lot of new tricks at once. I believe there's 6 new tricks over the 3 different skill levels, and we're gonna have IGOW Studios Dan break that down for you if you haven't heard of some of these in a minute here. But first I wanted to explain kind of my thinking for this challenge. And I've noticed in the preseason that a lot of the pilots like to challenge themselves and try to do all 3 of the beginner, intermediate, and advanced skill levels in one clip. And I wanted to set this one up so you could kind of do like a freestyle line and incorporate all the new tricks if you want to do that. For the beginner challenge, you could do those 2 in either order, but for intermediate and advanced, you do have to do those 3 required tricks in order. But it'd be cool if you could mix kind of all 3 of the challenge levels together into a cool line, kind of fly around, find some different obstacles and point of interests to do the tricks around and mix them up in a way that still meets all of the requirements but feels a little bit more freestyle-y. You can still just do them beginner, intermediate, advanced individually in order, or just do 1 or 2 of them, whatever you want. It's the preseason, totally optional, but I thought that would be fun for the pilots that like to challenge themselves. All right, so now I'm going to toss it over to IGOW Studios Dan, and he's going to go over the details of each of these new maneuvers for those pilots that are not familiar. Hello IGOWers, I'm IGOW Studios Dan, here in IGOW Studios, and I'm going to be explaining to you... Dude, bro! Are you coming to this party or what? I can't right now. Skittles is making me explain all these tricks. Can't you just have one of the other Dans do it? They're all gone already. We'll just make another Dan and he'll do it, okay? No, not doing that. Whatever, man. If you want to come, follow me. Okay, so I got the stuff. How exactly does this thing work? It's not an exact science. I just kind of push some of the buttons, toss the ingredients inside, and start her up. Okay, whatever. Alright, toss the stuff in. T-shirt. Wait a minute. Are those some OG brushed whoops? What, this? Yeah? You expect me to use one of my nice new builds? The batteries. Alright. Start it up.
Hello everyone, Professor Heads here. This week we are without Dr. OG Dr. Love, PhD. So instead, Skittles was kind enough to hook me up with one of his associates, as he calls him. So let's go ahead and give him a call, and then we'll get started on this week's assignment.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hello there, friend. What do I call you?
It's OG Dr. Dan, man.
Yeah, very well. You can call me Professor Heads. Say, OG Dan man, your hair is so luxurious. Is that real?
All mine.
Well, I'll be damned. It is real. Color me envious.
Should we get into the challenges for the week?
Don't you mean the combo wombos?
Isn't it called a wombo combo?
No. Combo wombos. We're not trying to get sued. Why don't I go ahead and kick us off with the beginner challenges? Okay, great. Now, for our beginner requirements, we're going to be doing 2 tricks in this clip, and this will have no edits or mistakes. You cannot touch the ground or your point of interest or yourself. Sinners. Both of these tricks you're going to be doing should be performed around or over or through a point of interest. So the idea here is that when you do a Juicy Flick, which is your first challenge, you're going to flip over the point of interest, and while inverted and looking at your point of interest, we're going to roll over so that we are back to our upright position. Now, from there, we're going to want to do what's called a snapback. For a snapback, we're going to fly past the point of interest again, but this time we will flip backwards, snap backwards to look at our point of interest. Then we will roll ourselves over to right side up again. Now, the key thing to remember here is that whichever way you rolled on your Juicy Flick, you need to do the opposite roll for the snapback. So make sure that you are remembering which roll direction you do first, and make sure you do the opposite for your second. Now, we must make sure that all of our movements are very separate from each other. We should have 2 solid movements in both of these tricks. There will be a pitch flip of some kind and then a roll out. But we don't want to see these 2 mixed and have you diagonal. We want you very clearly inverted and then rolling out of it. All the while keeping your point of interest in view of your camera. A little thing I'll mention about the snapbacks and the Juicy Flicks is that sometimes forward momentum is your friend here. If you flick yourself with some forward momentum, you have a little bit more to carry yourself through the air and give yourself time to roll out slowly so you don't have to feel forced in your stick movement. Finally, I should mention that you can do these tricks in any order that you'd like, and you can also mix up some more tricks in between, before or after, whatever you'd like. Just make sure that it's all in one clip and we have no accidents. Thank you, my big-headed whoop little friend. And that'll do it for the beginner challenges. And now, I'm going to kick it off to my pal, Afro Dan, the Micro Drone Man. He's going to run you through challenge number 2.
Thank you, Professor Heads. OG Dr. Dan back to talk to you about the intermediate requirements for this week's challenge. Now, you have to do all 3 of these tricks in one particular order, and you can add some other tricks in between as long as you get the order of your 3 tricks correctly. Now there's no height requirements. You can do this trick inside or outside, wherever you want, as long as you do them all in one take with no ground taps or bumps in between. Now your first trick is a Rubik's Cube. A Rubik's Cube is where you're going to do a half flip either forwards or backwards till you're inverted, and then do a full 360 roll ending back in the inverted position, and then continue your flip in the same direction that you started it in to level out and fly away from the trick. One thing that helps with a Rubik's Cube in a Cubik's Rube is to find a point of interest and focus your POV on that. So for instance, if you have a tree in your backyard, fly away from the tree. That way when you do your half flip to get inverted, you can focus on that tree to keep your roll centered. Now your second trick is going to be a Cubik's Rube, which is the opposite of a Rubik's Cube. For a Cubik's Rube, you're going to do a half roll to inverted, and then do a full flip back to inverted, and continue your roll in the same direction that you started to come back level and fly away. Now your third trick, we're doing another Rubik's Cube, but this time we're going to do it opposite. So if you flipped forward into a Rubik's Cube the first time, this time you're going to flip backwards to inverted in your Rubik's Cube. And if your first Rubik's Cube you rolled left, this Rubik's Cube you're going to roll right, and then continue your flip back in the same direction that you started it in for this second Rubik's Cube, back to level and fly away. Last thing I wanted to mention about these tricks is you can mix your roll and your pitch slightly to complete your Rubik's Cubes and Cubik's Rubes, but we do want to see some segmentation of the trick, not just banging your sticks diagonally and flipping us all around the screen. And that's going to do it for the intermediate challenges, so let me go ahead and throw it back on over to, what is that on your head?
This right here, it's an Afro pick.
But what is it picking?
I'm going to go ahead and kick them on over to the third and final set of challenges now. Alrighty, let's bring back our big-headed little friend here to go over our advanced requirements. Much like the other requirements, you must complete all of these tricks in the same line with no edits in the same clip. And you also may not have any mistakes or ground taps or bumps or anything of that sort. Two things to remember when going into the advanced requirements. First, you need to remember that you can use any height you'd like. So I recommend maybe going outside and flying way high up to do some of these, perhaps. And the second thing is, you're going to need to do all three of these tricks in the order that they are listed. Now, you can do tricks in between them, before and after them, but the three required tricks must be done in the order they are presented. Now, to begin, we're going to do a inverted 360 yaw spin. We will do a front flip or back flip, whichever you prefer, into the inverted position. From here, you're going to want to spin on your yaw axis in 360 degrees. Now, you can go a little over and a little under, but you gotta be pretty dang close to 360 degrees. A little wiggle room, but not much. I highly recommend for these tricks picking a point of interest that you can keep your camera focused on so you know when you stop if you've done a full 360 or if you've perhaps gone too far. For the second part of the challenge, we're going to need to do an inverted And the way we do those is we roll or flip into the inverted position. Once here, we're going to do 3 total turns at least 45 degrees on our yaw axis. So that will look like this, and then back, and then to the center. The idea here is that we are making a shake with our head. So think of that when you do it with your whoop. Just like that. Just make sure you return back to center. I suggest again using a point of interest when doing all of these inverted yaw tricks that we are doing here in the advanced requirements. Finally, once you have completed the inverted 360 degree yaw spin by flipping in or out on your pitch axis, then you have rolled or flipped into your inverted axis and done your Now, once you do that, we are going to roll in either our right or left direction, inverted again. And from here, whatever we did In the first challenge, whatever direction we spun, we're going to spin the opposite direction for the final challenge. One thing I can tell you about doing all of these inverted yaw tricks is that you're going to want to keep your horizon as flat and as close to the center as possible while rotating. That's really what makes those tricks look neat. So one way to do that is you're going to need to adjust your roll and your pitch to match your yaw as you go, depending on your camera angle. Now, I fly at a much lower camera angle, so my camera angle is already pretty close to flat. So I make very little adjustments when I'm spinning on my yaw axis by just adding a tiny bit of roll and even less pitch. If you have a higher camera angle, you may need to up the amount that you are adding in to balance everything out and keep that horizon nice and flat. One other thing I guess I should mention, if you don't know already about these inverted yaw tricks, is sometimes flying straight up in the air and flipping and trying to do them as you fall is not the best bet in a whoop. It's really hard to recover falling straight down in a whoop. So I recommend getting a bit of forward momentum if you can, and then fling yourself into the inverted position, so that way you have a little bit of that forward momentum to hold you there in the air for a moment, give you time to begin spinning. We also want to make sure that our throttle is buried all the way down to 0 when we go inverted. We don't want to be throttling down any more than we already will be. And that will do it for this week's Combo Wombo Challenges.
From Infinity Loops, this is OG Dr. Dan.
And I'm Professor Heads.
Don't you mean Professor Heads?
Yeah, that's what I said. Anyways, back to you in the studio, Dan.
Oh, those two idiots. You love them, but I figured they might not do any actual flying, so stick Cam Dan here to go over some basics of doing the tricks while you're actually flying. First, we're going to do them in the sim, because when you're trying new tricks like this, you absolutely want to start in the simulator to get that muscle memory into your fingers before you go out and try it in real life. And then we'll rip a few packs outside and call it a video. All right? So the first thing I want to show is how to get to the IGOW environment that T-Bone made for IGOW 5, and you simply go to single player, choose any drone that you want, and then you search for IGOW in the bar here, and then it's called the IGOW Arena, this one right here. Click fly, and then you're in it. So you can start the race if you want, but there's not an actual race going, and there's not an actual path really. There's a bunch of gates in the middle. But if there's a whole bunch of indicators on, you just push I to get rid of those. Anyway, this is a pretty awesome environment. If you haven't flown around it yet, for sure, should fly around, check it out. It's huge. There's a ton of different obstacles. Looks super cool. And yeah, so let's fly around and do some of the requirements for this challenge. So first, let's pick something out. What do we want to do? Our Juicy Flicks and Snapbacks on. This little tree here looks like a good obstacle. Looks like there's a plenty of space around it, so let's use this thing. And what we want to do first is get some momentum by flying at the obstacle. Especially when you're doing a whoop, you want to get a bunch of momentum. And then for the Juicy Flick, it's basically a half front flip and then a half roll once you get the object in your FPV view. So with a whoop, you're not going to have as much momentum as a bigger quad, so you're going to start to drift back towards the object once you do your half flip. So keep that in mind. With a bigger quad, you're going to have a lot more momentum when you toss yourself past it to keep going. So you can do it either roll direction, but remember you have to do opposite left and right for the challenge. So Juicy Flick, typically the half flip part is a little bit slower, and then the roll when you have the object in view. And Snapback, let's do a different obstacle. I typically like to fly kind of through something when I'm doing a Snapback. Just use this thing here. You fly past it, snap back, and then do the half roll. So you don't have to go faster on the snapback with your half flip than you do on the Juicy Flick, but that's just kind of how I typically see both of those tricks. Okay, so that's our beginner tricks. You got the Juicy Flick, and then you have to do a snapback with the opposite roll direction, remember. And then do any other trick, and you've completed beginner. So for the intermediate requirements, we're going to be doing Rubik's Cubes and Cubics Rubes. So a Rubik's Cube is simply a mix of a flip and a roll. You're going to do a half flip to inverted, full roll, half flip. So that was kind of a slow version of it, and I've got a ton of time in the sim because the environment is huge. But you might have to do it a little faster in real life. So if you kind of blend the corners a little bit, that's okay. But you do need to have a discernible half flip and half roll. And the other really important thing for Rubik's Cube is that whatever half flip you start with, I did a half front flip, full roll, and then I have to complete the half front flip afterwards. You can't exit out of the roll in some, or of the trick in some other way. You have to complete the half flip you started with. So that's a Rubik's Cube, and then our next trick is a Cubics Rube, which is kind of like the opposite, or maybe you'd say inverse, analog, whatever. It's a half roll, full flip, half roll. So again, you can do left or right, or front or back flip, it doesn't matter. You just have to half roll to inverted, full flip, half roll out. And again, you can blend in the corners if you need to, but you have to have discernible tricks. And again, the most important thing we're going to be looking for in judging is if you do a half left flip, then you have to complete the half left roll. You have to complete the half left roll after doing your full flip. So same thing with right. If you go right, you have to finish the right roll. All right, so then the final trick for intermediate is just another Rubik's Cube, and I like to do my Rubik's Cubes front flip, right roll, front flip. So my third trick, I have to do opposite flip and roll of that. So I have to go back flip, left roll, back flip. So let's use the IGOW sign as a little reference here. Again, back flip, left roll, back flip. And I've done both direction Rubik's Cubes and a Cubics Rube. Just have to complete one other trick, and I've completed the challenge. And finally, for the advanced requirements, we're going to be doing inverted yaw spins. Alright, so I like to be able to see the horizon when I do my inverted yaw spins, because it helps me know, or helps let me know if I'm being flat or not. So let's go up above the structure here, and start with the half flip to inverted, 360 yaw spin, and exit. So you don't have to finish the exact half flip or roll you use to enter your 360 yaw spin like you do for the Rubik's Cube, but you can if you want. But anyway, the second trick we're going to be doing is an inverted That's similar. You go inverted and then you shake your head I didn't keep the horizon very level there, so let's try that again. Invert and then exit. And then finally, we have to do one more inverted yaw spin, but this one, instead of entering with a half flip, we want to enter with a half roll, 360 yaw spin, and then exit out. And those are the three tricks that we're going to be doing for the advanced requirements. Anyway, let's go out into the real world and rip some packs. Alright, so I couldn't have a full IGOW video with no real life footage, but it's very windy out today. I don't know if you can tell, I can go very fast this direction, and not nearly as fast this direction. But wind is part of flying, and especially with tiny whoops, we need to know how to use it or fight against it when we're flying. So for Juicy Flick and Snapback is not the greatest tiny whoop tricks because they kind of rely on you having like extra momentum and then using that to drift the opposite direction away from your point of interest as you do the half roll. So you really got to get a lot of speed with the tiny whoop, because otherwise when you turn around you're gonna come back towards it. So like if I do a really slow approach and a half flip, half roll, like I'm already right back at the obstacle, and ideally you want to be drifting away when you do your half roll. So Juicy Flick, let's get some speed. We go past the obstacle, half roll, and then half flip back to level with the obstacle in view. And I'm using the wind to help push me away from the obstacle rather than go into the wind and fight it when I'm doing my half roll. And a snapback is just the opposite, a half flip, back flip, and then a half roll. See so how much the wind pushed me back towards the obstacle there? So I definitely want to use the wind to help toss me away. So I'll go half back flip, half roll, and then it looks a lot smoother there. right? So the main thing we got to remember when we're doing our Juicy Flick and our snapback is that we use opposite roll directions. So left there, right there, any other trick, and we completed the beginner requirements. For the intermediate requirement for the Neos UV combo wombos, we're going to be doing Rubik's cubes, right? So a Rubik's cube is like a flip and a roll combined together. You're going to do a half flip, full roll, half, whoa, got a little confused there trying to say it slowly. So a Rubik's cube is like a combination of a flip and a roll. You're going to do a half flip, full roll, half flip. And the main thing we're going to be judging with Rubik's cubes is that whatever half flip you enter with, you complete at the end. Okay, so if I do a half front flip to start my Rubik's cube, which is what I typically like, then I do a full roll, then I have to finish the half front flip to complete it. And then a Cubic's Rube is very similar, but it's kind of the opposite, or the analog, inverse, whatever you want to say. Half roll, full flip, half roll. So again, you can do left or right, front flip or back flip. Just have to do a half roll, full flip, and half roll. And again, just like the Rubik's Cube, whatever half roll you start with, you have to complete that same half roll to complete the trick properly. Then finally, the last thing we have to do for advance is just another Rubik's Cube. But since I really like my front, right, front, that's what I do the most. I also have to do the opposite though for the second one, which is back, left, back for me. I kind of over rotated it there a little bit, but let's do another one, back, left, back. That was a little cleaner. And then after we've done those three in a row, a Rubik's Cube, and then a Cubic's Rube, and then another Rubik's Cube, but with the opposite direction, you fly away cleanly, perform any other trick, and the intermediate requirements of the Neos combo wombos are complete. And as the wind picks up, we're going into the advanced requirements of the Neos combo wombos, and that is the inverted yaw spin. I know this one is a little scary for some people, but it's the trickiest part of the entire trick is getting the horizon level. See, there I was way off and it looked all funny, didn't look good. So for the first advanced requirement, you need to enter your inverted yaw spin with a half flip. So you can do a half front flip or a half back flip. Whoa, that one was terrible. I got caught a wind gust there. So yeah, you need to enter with a half front flip or a half back flip, and then do a 360 inverted yaw spin and then exit. But unlike the Rubik's Cube, you can just exit any way you want. You don't have to do the same half roll or half flip you started. So again, let's try to do a good one. Go with the wind, half roll, 360, and exit. I was a little off there. The judging will be, you can go an extra 90, but you can only be 45 degrees short on your spin. So try to get it right at exactly 360. That's ideal, but you're not always going to be able to do that perfect. If you have something to help you, like let's say I go directly away from this tree and then I look at it and I can spin back, then I can see the tree again and I know I've done 360. That helps a lot. Okay, so the other requirement in the advanced requirements is the inverted which is very much like an inverted yaw spin, but you just go rather than do a full 360 yaw spin. You just shake the drone's head back and forth, and then you've done that requirement. Okay, so the three tricks that you must do in order for the advanced requirements are: first, an inverted yaw spin that you enter with a half flip. And then your second trick is going to be an inverted and you have to go at least 2 direction changes. So you invert I did it more than necessary. And then finally your last trick is another inverted 360 yaw spin, but this one you need to enter with a half roll rather than a half flip. All right, So there are the advanced requirements. Fly away cleanly, perform any other trick, and you've completed the Neo's UV Creations Combo Wombos.
Happy feet. Wombo combo. That ain't Falco.